Welcome to Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave. Well, we're on a journey to answer 4 leadership questions from some of the best leadership minds and leaders in the United States. So with that, we are pleased to have special guest Heather Hovermale on for today's episode. So welcome, Heather.
Thank you, Dr. Dave. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, thrilled that you're here. And introduce yourself to our listeners and give us a little bit of your background, who you are, what you do.
Hi, okay. I'm Heather Hovermale. I'm the Commonwealth Attorney for the City of Winchester. I have been, it's a Commonwealth Attorney is a DA or a prosecutor for those who are not native Virginians. And I have been a prosecutor for the past 12 years, and the last 3 of which I've been the elected for the City of Winchester.
Yeah, thank you for throwing that. I don't, I live in a state and not a Commonwealth, right?
Right.
Translation for everybody else, right? It's the DA, right? Yeah, it was always a thing for me. Like, when you hear district attorney, like, I know Commonwealth's attorney, I know commissioner of the revenue, all these things that are just like unique to Virginia that nobody else has.
Right.
They don't term them that way, but now you're leading as the elected Commonwealth's attorney or elected DA, you're leading the office. You have prosecutors that work for you, and you make the decisions on what cases you take and what you don't. So that's very cool to be kind of in that leadership position, which is one of the reasons I was really excited about having you on to interview. Having somebody in that leadership position from the legal background, because that's definitely a unique place versus manufacturing or service industry or professional services. Or even just a regular law firm. I mean, that's a unique position for leadership to be in. So speaking of leadership, let's get into the first question is, what does leadership mean to you, and what does good leadership look like?
Okay. Well, to me, leadership means that you are influencing others to reach a goal. And so here in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, that goal is, of course, to seek justice. So to be a good leader, and particularly in this office, I think integrity has to be at the center of it. So you have to be helping your employees. So in my office, I have 19 employees, 8 of whom are attorneys. And so you have to be helping them grow and to reach their potential and to make them empowered to do what's right in our community. So I think it's giving the right balance of guidance, but also the ability for them to make decisions on their own, as long as that it's guided.
Well, tell us a little bit more about that. How do you strike that balance between, how I want things done, and giving them that autonomy to be able to make those decisions on their own?
Sure. Well, I think it starts with having a very understood culture. So here in our office, we know that every time you're going to make the decision that you're going to be able to sleep with at night. So it's not always about winning a case, but it is about doing the right thing every time. So if they start with that viewpoint, it's going to help for them to make decisions that I would have made myself. So we all come together as a group. The attorneys, we meet weekly to hash out any difficult decisions that may require the thought process of more than one person. We also are here for each other anytime you want to bounce an idea off. So open door philosophy. We make sure that we are considering the needs of multiple people in our community. So the victims, of course, but also the officers we work with, the citizens that we serve, and even in a lot of times the defendants. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to make productive tax-paying citizens who can contribute to the community. So we're trying to keep all of those things in mind when we're fashioning a decision.
Nice. That's nice. And I like how you're striking the balance. It's not all one thing or the other, and realizing at the end of the day, it's about doing the right thing. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't go to school for 3 years to be able to charge people a lot of money to say it depends, right? So my legal background is limited, but correct me if I'm wrong. If the stereotype for a lot of prosecutors' offices it's just all about, pluses in the win category.
I really do think that is the stereotype, and I hope to overcome that, because we are not looking at just wins. We're looking at keeping the community safe first and foremost and seeking justice. Obviously. So that doesn't always end in a defendant being incarcerated. So we're working on other programs right now, such as behavioral health docket to help those who have some mental health challenges. We're also working on the drug court, which, of course, I think people in our community might be aware of, but for those who aren't, it is a really intensive wraparound services program that helps people who are suffering from addiction. And trying to get them back on the right track, because getting them back on the right track has this ripple effect of helping the children who might grow up without parents otherwise, and helping employers to have productive employers, and then ultimately that helps keep the community safe. So
Nice.
no, we're not just looking for wins. We're looking for justice.
Nice. Well, and that's a welcome relief to hear that. And I wish more prosecutors' offices felt like that. But I'm just curious, especially with people that are outside the greater Winchester area that don't know about it. Give me a little bit more detail, kind of explain like the drug court and how that whole process works, because that is really unique to obviously not just trying to fill the jails up, but like you said, making productive citizens and looking at kind of the root problem of what kind of got them to that place to commit the crime in the first place. Tell us a little bit more about the drug court.
Right. To be admitted into the drug court, you have to have high risk, high needs. So you're assessed by our partners at Northwestern Community Services, and you also have to be willing to do the program. So you're told from the outset that it's going to be a lot of work. You got to put the work in. You have to meet with counselors. You have to meet with in group work. You're going to have a probation officer, intensive probation. You have to abstain to the best of your ability. Of course, there are sometimes relapses, and we deal with that. But the number one rule in drug court is to be honest. Right. So it's about building people up so that they can make the decisions they need, and it's about surrounding them with a network of people that they're going to be able to rely on once they graduate from the drug court program. So ultimately, it ends up saving taxpayers money because the cost of incarcerating people outweighs the cost of putting them into this program. So it has a financial benefit too.
Nice. Well, what are some of the successes maybe that you've had that you can kind of use as an illustration? Obviously, no names, but what are some of the success stories maybe that you've had with putting people through the drug court system instead of putting them behind bars?
Right. Well, we have some of our graduates who have gone on to actually work in public service. So there's one individual that's working with the public defender's office, helping people who have been in the place where they've been before. We have somebody who has gone on to help with other people in addiction. So that's nice to see them pay it forward after they've received all of the support of the drug court. Not specific to drug court, but I did have one defendant who I worked with a lot, and finally was able to set it up so that they were able to overcome their particular problem that they were having, and they went on to become a very successful person who's been helping others in the community, and now is a mother of two, and really just contributing to our society.
Nice. Well, it's not as common as it should be, or it would be nice if it was more common to hear more of those success stories versus, like we said, just, okay, did the crime, prosecute, check the box, in jail. Did the crime, check the box, prosecute, in jail. There's to be able to have some innovative programs like that that can really make a difference. And how, just from I know you might not know the exact data, but how common are some of those programs throughout the country?
Well, I think they're becoming more and more popular and successful. We recently, this area has opened in 2 new drug courts in Shenandoah County and in Warren County, and our drug court operates in Frederick County and so our region is well. I think that it's becoming more and more that the model. But when you think about how this is leadership, I also strive to empower the to come in and they're interested in that and go on and make changes. So we have to work with MVP, so that's multidisciplinary, working with DSS, working with the school systems, working with the forensic nurses, the healthcare system, to be able to provide holistic interviews and opportunities. We've got lots of other things going on too. It all starts with you as a leader, so that your team goes out and makes the changes.
Nice. Well, it's good to hear that you're making those relationships with, like I said, the Department of Social Services and the healthcare system and hospital and all these different agencies that sometimes is it good to say don't play nice in the sandbox on occasion. Just saying. Yeah, there's a rumor, right? I've heard it before. Sometimes people don't play nice in the sandbox with each other when it comes to. It's almost like the. I'm joking, of course, but it's almost like the seagulls there in the movie Mine, 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 Mine.
Finding Nemo.
Finding Nemo, yes, it's like the seagulls in Finding Nemo on occasion. So it's a refreshing thing to see them maybe calm down a little bit and work together in a productive way to help that. So hopefully, like I said, it's not too many times to hear the Northern Shenandoah Valley is, hey, this is a model for the whole Commonwealth, for other states around there to be able to take this program and be able to. But you're right, it does come down to leadership. If somebody doesn't take a hold of the reins and realize, hey, this is a good thing, this is a benefit, like you said, this is the right thing to do, not the expedient thing to do. Expedient thing to do is just just go through, prosecute, they're in jail. Versus, hey, this is a little bit more of a pain in the butt. This is a lot more work. It's a lot more hassle. But in the end, the benefits of, like you said, cheaper for the taxpayer, more productive for the employers around, better for the person in general. I mean, just making more happier, more productive citizens is awesome. And I think that you're right. It does go back to leadership, because if you don't have the vision, and maybe I could talk a little bit about how you see leadership and as far as having a vision to do these types of, be willing to try these innovative programs and these different things that are kind of out of the norm.
Right. So I think what's important is to make sure that everybody's on the same page as to when it's appropriate to provide these things. Obviously, there are individuals who we do incarcerate, and our goal is to make sure that this person's not safe. I think it's just about empowering people to look at the case as a whole and be able to make those decisions, and knowing that they have their leadership backing and that they can speak when needed.
Gotcha. Well, how important do you think, or explain to me, kind of a leader having a vision and a passion to be able to be willing to step out and try something new like this?
Right. Well, I think that it's important that when you are a leader and you're looking into these things, you're also listening. So I think it's important that you gather all the necessary information and that you're making good strategic decisions and that you're not just jumping in and trying to. So I think that whenever you do that and the folks that you're leading know that you're doing that they're going to be more inclined to follow you in the path and willingly.
Oh, I've heard a rumor about that too, the shiny object syndrome and check the box. And what was the other one? Oh, yeah, flavor of the month. Oh, God, here they come again with another initiative, another whatever. Yeah, we'll stick with that for like 6 months and that'll be gone.
Right.
I'm sure you've seen that before.
I have, and we try to not do that in our office. And honestly, I have such a great group of people. If I was even tempted to do that, they would bring me back down to earth and we need to think about
Hey, back off the ledge, Heather. No. That's not what we.
That's right. I think having the right people too helps with that, because my team is just phenomenal. So we really do work as a group.
Well, coming from the leadership position, you're the one that has to determine, okay, who, whether it's attorneys or paralegals or other staff, who am I going to bring on staff and how do they fit into the culture? Tell a little bit about maybe your process or your thought process behind bringing in new attorneys, bringing in new paralegals, bringing in new team members that do fit with the culture that you're trying to create and maintain.
Exactly. Well, I think that's the most important part. So I try my best to know as much about candidates as possible. So we do have a internship program with our office that helps because 2 or 3 months working with somebody can really give you an idea whether they're going to step into your
Try before you buy kind of thing.
right. Exactly. We do have the benefit of pension. We've retained the majority of our employees through my tenure. I think we've
Nice.
one retire since I took office. Not that many opportunities to mess up with talking when it didn't. I'm always prepared for it and the plan.
Nice. Well, don't get me wrong. That's not a bad thing. I mean, that's that's a testament to the culture you built to not have a tremendous amount of churn or turnover, or always having to look for new attorneys. That, God forbid, maybe it means you're doing something right.
I do think that another thing to keep in mind is for people to do the work effectively, they need to be happy while you do want to have some separation between work and personal life, you need to be combined with people who often we like telework whenever practical, and each of our staff members has a day that they telework, and that helps them catch up without being bothered by attorneys. And then as far as attorneys go, if their court schedule allows for it, then that's to work. And I think that will strike the work-life balance and just get ready to come into work and not be bothered by each other. Have a little bit of downtime to dig into the work they need to do. And then also, we're very supportive of family life here. So we work really hard to support each other. If somebody needs to be out because they have a preschool graduation or something of that nature, somebody else is going to cover for them, and they know that they're going to be covered in return.
Nice. No, that's fantastic. And having that kind of flexible setup, I think really, like I said, it goes to work-life balance, but it goes to kind of developing the atmosphere and the environment of, wow, they actually care about me as a person, right? They actually, care what I think. And, like I said, I can go to the preschool graduation if I need to. I can go to this if I need to, because you're still getting the work done. I mean, and probably more apt to put in a few extra hours to get the work done because that flexibility, and not like, oh man, I got to take 3 hours of PTO to go to this.
Right. I think so.
No, I think that's fantastic. And I mean, that's a good example of going out of the way and to create something that's going to maintain that retention rate that you're talking about. Or why would I want to go somewhere else when it's strict 9 to 5? I got to be there, suit and tie every day. I have no flexibility at all versus maybe make a little bit less in this office than I would at this county or that city or whatever. But I got a good gig here, and I don't want to screw this up. Right? This is really this is a great environment. So I think because I know years ago when I was in the fire department, and we'll wrap up this first segment with this. I remember there's a lot of us that worked for the city of Portsmouth that could have gone to a different city for, at the time, a lot more money, but it was more the environment. Like we knew the other place was going to be way more formal, way more structured, way more where it was such a family atmosphere where we were at. We were like, why leave? And then, especially with, having kind of a separate retirement, but when the retirement was back to the state retirement, and when the culture and the atmosphere started changing to get more like the other departments, then it's just a matter of, wow, it's not the family environment anymore. Wow, it's not the, it's this is the same as everybody else. Then it's just dollars at that point.
Right.
And then you started seeing
the family atmosphere is exactly what we seek to. I wouldn't say attain because my office has had it before me. So there was a family atmosphere when I came in. So I just want to keep that.
Nice. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this segment of Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave, and we will be back in just a few. Welcome back to Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave. We're here with Heather Hovermale, and she's a Commonwealth attorney for the City of Winchester, Virginia. And we just talked a little bit in the last segment about what leadership means to her and what does good leadership look like. And we learned a little bit about some innovative programs that are going on in the region, but especially when it pertains to prosecutions in the drug court, and hearing a little bit about that. But in our next segment, now we're going to talk a little bit about some challenges and some mistakes that people are making. So with that, I'd like to jump into our next question, Heather, if we can. What was one of the biggest leadership challenges you've had to face?
Well, I would say that one of the biggest challenges I've faced so far is really folks who've been doing this thing for a long time. So to help them realize there's still more to learn and perhaps focus them on others. So I think that's been my biggest challenge so far, but I think that it's been one that we've been able to overcome. The second part of teaching others also helps people to continue to learn. So if I've asked them to teach in a particular area or update the police department on the law or something like that, they then have to do the research to see what's changing and what's new in order to be able to teach others. So that's been pretty employees.
Well, that's a tough one because, I mean, it's really difficult when you have people that have been there for 12, 15, 20 years on how do you keep it fresh? How do you keep it new? You know, and that's kind of goes to retention and motivation. I mean, to some degree, retention is, all right, I got 6 more years before the state says I can retire, you know? I mean, at some point, they're not going to bail in there. You got them, right?
Right.
But to try to keep them, like I said, fresh and motivated and going, I used to have a joke where I talked about, you know, especially we used it with a lot of the firefighters. I've got 20 years experience. Well, do you have 20 years of experience, or do you have 1 year experience that you've rinsed and repeat 19 additional times, right?
Right.
And it sounds like with you getting them in there, say, hey, can you update this department on these changes in this law, and having them need to delve into the research and actually find out for themselves and learn. It sounds like you kind of, you know, got a little bit of a process on fixing that to a certain degree to keeping them in the book so that truly if they're 20 years of experience because they're continuing to learn and grow and do versus, yeah, it's still illegal to beat somebody up. I'm going to take it. So I'm going to take them to the judge and get them into clean, right? I mean, that's
exactly. You know, it's not a one size fits all. What might motivate somebody to grow, even though they've been doing it for a while, might not be the same as someone else. But I think the trick is figuring out what that motivation is going to be, because even though they have so much institutional knowledge, they may still not have yet reached their full potential because there's always room.
absolutely. I think on an individual basis, but really, like I said, you may have to customize that to each individual person, but just the idea that people understand that you never finish learning,
Right.
that you're constantly growing, you're constantly developing, you're constantly learning. I had a gentleman one time, and then, you know, I was taking a class, and it was fairly recently, and a guy that I know, that he was like, what are you doing? I'm studying for this particular class and I'm taking or whatever, you know. It was a great class. It was a business class, and I really wanted to kind of dig into this kind of revenue science type of thing. So I signed up for the class, and he's like, "Why are you taking a class? You already got a PhD. I don't get it. Why are you taking a class?" And I'm like, "All right, apparently." You just don't get it. It's like, no, when you come out of high school and you get a diploma, or you come out of college and you get the sheepskin, it's kind of like that's not where it stops. You know.
I think it's important that all of our people we're working with realize that as well, because particularly in our profession, there's always something new to learn. The law changes also keep happens differently. Okay, so there might be a thousand pieces of laws in your history that you've never even learned about, and then you have this opportunity to become a quasi expert in that area by learning about it, or case that involves a, a nursing home, for example, and you have to learn what's actually going on within the nursing home, or there's always something new to learn, and if people get interested about it.
Oh, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, one thing that if you could, find a profession that is got a rock solid base but never stops changing, obviously the law is it. I mean, just in Virginia, and I'm sure it's the same in every other state. I mean, every year, General Assembly's there. What's coming? That's we're gonna have to deal with in July after they've been there for 45 days doing their thing in Richmond. Matter of fact, our one of the local chambers reached out to the Winchester area SHRM chapter, kind of in a quasi panic. And you'll appreciate this with the legal profession. They were like, "Oh my God, there are these new rules from the Department of Labor coming saying that the salary cap or the salary floor for exempt employees, whether it's from a management end or a high compensation employee end, is changing." And it's getting ready to go up in July 1, and it's getting ready to go up again in January 1. And they're freaking out about, what do we do? Do you guys have anything to say on it or whatever? So they were able to actually pivot on a dime, and they're doing an online session to try to make it a little bit more accessible for folks where they bring in an actual employment attorney and somebody who works at the HR Knowledge Center, who's actually the executive director of the HR Knowledge Center for SHRM, to kind of put them in the same virtual room together and explain to everybody, here's what the changes are coming, here's what it means to you, and here's what you can do about it.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I can take a passive approach when it comes to the law, because I feel that as a leader, as a officer, I need to make sure that my folks have the tools in order to do their job. So I joined the legislative watch committee of the Virginia Association of Commonwealth Attorneys. So I actually go in there this time lobbying for the laws that we need in order to do our job. It's not always successful. I do my best to make sure that the people who are making the laws understand the implications and the maybe unintended consequences that some laws might have that they couldn't possibly know unless they're in the process of doing this work. So I do that too, and then try to make sure that we have the
That's awesome. Well, and there's not a lot of people that are as proactive, and I'm sure part of that is having really good relationships with a lot of the state delegates and state senators that are in our region. I'm not sure you see them down there lobbying, but just keeping those relationships going when it's not that 45 days.
Absolutely.
It's like, oh my gosh, he only shows up, during General Assembly when he wants something, but when you have that relationship, I mean, the line is long sometimes outside their door for people that want stuff. But
and I think that you just hit on a great point in that how important relationships are, across the board with the people in Richmond, but also with our local leaders or city council. Like, it's so important that we maintain these open lines of communication.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it's an underutilized skill that people don't. Sometimes they do, but a lot of folks don't understand the power of building those relationships, making the connections, and then fostering them, because it's a lot of work to keep those relationships up. It's not you can't just go home, plop on the couch, throw Netflix on, and get some popcorn, and and think that every night and think that those relationships are going to keep going. Right? There's a lot of work involved in it, but the benefits are far outweigh the amount of work going into it, especially when it comes to the kind of stuff that you do.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I don't know what it's like to just go home and watch Netflix.
Neither do I. I've heard rumors that it's. You know me well enough that that's not a damn either. But but I'm obviously bought in hook, line, and sinker to the relationship building philosophy myself. But speaking about building relationships and people not wanting to do that, I think this falls into the category of the next question that I'm getting ready to ask. But what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes leaders make today?
Well, I've already said this word so many times, it's going to sound cliche, but it's the lack of communication, and specifically not listening. I believe that people, in leadership positions often love to talk, but don't take enough time to listen. Right?
You see my E-Trade baby shock face. Some leaders love to run on at the mouth. I never would have imagined. Well, how do you think that leaders can incorporate better communication and better active listening skills into their leadership practice?
Well, I think first of all, in person. I don't like to do a whole lot of business via email if I can help it. I try to limit even phone calls. I do a lot of Zoom meetings with people if they're unable to come to meet in person. But I really do think that actually seeing people makes a big difference. I think a lot is lost in nonverbal communication, and I think sometimes meetings can be misunderstood. So that's the first step, to actually take the time to meet with the person. And then secondly, to try to figure out where people are coming from. Like most people, I believe, are doing the best they can and have good intentions. I think that it just comes down to figuring out what the goal is and how that goal might not be completely in line with yours, but it might not be completely divergent from yours either. So trying to figure out where you can intersect and what compromises you. That's where we don't hear a lot anymore, compromise. So that's helpful too.
Yes. Well, and I mean, with what you do, I mean, it's, crucial. I mean, that's a day-to-day part of, it might be out of the conversation of the lexicon of everybody else. Like there is no compromise. I'm green or I'm yellow, I'm left or I'm right, whatever. It doesn't matter. But yeah, people are, the compromise thing just doesn't seem to, well, with them going to Richmond, going to the General Assembly, obviously it's got to be a big thing because you're not going to get anything done if you're like, this is the way it is and I'm not going to budge. And your situation, I mean, tell us about how important it is to, I mean, because obviously about plea bargaining and all kinds of different ways of, there's different ways of compromising everything. You're not all right, I'm going to go for the max sentence and win every single time, right? So tell me about how you incorporate and how you foster that that spirit of kind of compromise and cooperation and collaboration in your office.
So I'll get to that, but I just wanted to mention what you just said, which was the nature of plea bargaining. And I think that that's also a common misconception. When I meet with folks, sometimes people say they think people plea bargain too much. And then I ask them, I say, and a lot of times they're and so I asked them, I said, well, you want to remove that from the defendant because they already have the option of going to trial. And they continue to have that option. They don't have to take a plea bargain. So do you want to remove that certainty that they have? And I like to think because I believe we don't bring any criticism of it. So the individual knows what evidence we have against them, and they choose to do anything plea agreement. And that might be a compromise on behalf of the Commonwealth as well, but our victims often don't want to testify. They want this to be over. They don't want the appeal process to happen, and they want to move on with their lives. So oftentimes this is maybe not a win-win because it's not everybody's happy, but this is the ability for people to move on with their lives, both for the victim and the defendant. So plea agreements are important. It's also important for the society and the community because otherwise people will be spending a lot of time in jury. So I don't think they think about that, just how many times they would have to want a jury throughout the year if we had juries on every day. Not to mention the taxpayers' dollars that have to go to pay for the additional court judges, prosecutors, bailiffs, attorneys, all of the things they don't really think about. So I think that compromise is an absolute crucial part. People I don't think really think through.
No, I would agree with that. And I like what you said about it ends up being a good outcome for everybody. If it's not going to be a good outcome for everybody, it's not a wise thing to do. But considering, let's say, the victim, the defendant, the Commonwealth, the community, just in general, like I said, it sounds like you know the times where this is going to be a good positive thing, and you know the times where, oh yeah, no, this ain't the time to plea bargain. Like this dude's got to go right. This dude's got to go bye bye.
Yeah, we do have those, certainly. So, and then I think this is something else that people don't often realize. They see one crime and they see them on somebody got accident. And then they see another crime that they to be worse and very well may be. Well, why did that person get less time and what this person's leader got for this seemingly less crime? And they're not considering that person's criminal history, and they're not considering the nature of the evidence. Because sometimes these crimes, even though we're talking about human heaven wouldn't be allowed to be committed to have done the same thing to the other literally to the system statement. But we also know how jurors feel about he said cases when they use physical evidence. We might see that to less than what we would if we had a lot of people in the video. So people don't always see the whole picture when they're opining on the different sentences.
Well, and I'm sure it talked a little bit about, for those that aren't in the legal profession, the role of intent in how you prosecute crimes.
Yeah, so it depends on the crime what type of intent is required, because sometimes you just assume that if somebody shoots somebody that they intended the natural probable consequences of their actions. However, there are some crimes that are specific intent. So you have to say that they specifically intended to do what they set out to do. And sometimes that can be quite difficult because you have to do it through circumstantial evidence. You typically don't defendant admitting, yes, I intended to do this. So, yes, that's an element of almost all crimes, and something people don't think about.
You know what, dear Heather, I intended to shoot this guy. Signed bill, right? You don't get those, do you?
And if you do, you're probably going to have a diminished capacity to defend.
Fair point. Fair point. And you're like, well, how far are we going to get with the prosecution with a diminished capacity, right? How's this going to work? So that's funny. But yeah, it's a lot to consider. And that's a good viewpoint for people to have, is that, to not just, judge the book by its cover. You read a couple lines in the local newspaper and get indignant about, oh, why this, why that? How did this happen? How did that happen? But there's a lot more circumstance and nuance into the situation. And honestly, I don't think that's just with prosecutions. I think that's across the board with everything.
Right. It's easy to judge something that you know a little bit about, right? But that's not right. Knowledge.
Yes, I think we're too apt to jump to conclusions by just reading the headline and not the article, and not get some of the context and nuance in a lot of different situations. So I think it's a great time to wrap up this segment. So we will be back with Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave in just a moment. Welcome back to Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave, where we are going to hit our last segment today with Heather Hovermale. And with that, let's jump headlong into our final question. What do you think is the best way for leaders to improve their leadership skills?
I think it starts with keep learning, trying to improve your skills, and don't grow complacent. Like for example, my leadership class with you, and that you did to help me learn about my as a leader. I thought that was great. I think that attending the classes, I think that reading available materials, putting it into practice, and be aware, having the awareness that this is your responsibility, and you can't just take it for granted.
Nice. Yeah, I would definitely recommend anybody listening to look at what chamber leadership programs are around. And there's other programs outside of that. I know in the Hampton Roads area, there's a program Lead 757, and there's some other different programs that are out there that are almost like community leadership program 2.0 type of thing. It's kind of that next level up. But yeah, there's a lot of chambers that run those type of cohort leadership programs, and I can't recommend those highly enough because you build relationships with a lot of other folks that some of those can be lifelong relationships for the people you go through with the cohort and learning a little bit about yourself. But yeah, I would definitely encourage people to look at that. But I would kind of be interested in, you were talking about self-awareness and you were talking about kind of learning a little bit more about from going through the assessment that you did. So tell us a little bit more about that and how that was kind of impactful, insightful, and kind of how, it landed with you.
Well, I think that some of the things that I learned through that assessment, I knew on some level. I think it helped to remind me that these are the things that I need to work on, and that these are the skills that I can that I'm good at, that I can use to benefit the office. And I think that it was a lot of it was just taking the time to give it some consideration, and then to come back and try to put it into practice and make sure that what it is actively using that.
Well, I laugh because I know the assessment tool you took was, behavior and communication style, how you process information and communicate with others. And part of it was some of the deeper like drivers and motivators and kind of what pushes your buttons. And then have that inventory of that of soft skill competencies, right? And what I laugh about that, somebody mentioned this, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago, and I never really, like you said, you kind of intuitively knew it, but I didn't never put it to words. Somebody said, if you have this kind of information on your staff, your employees, your direct reports, whatever, why are you getting mad at somebody for doing poorly in a position or poorly in a job, a task that's part of their position, when it's probably number 23 out of 25 on their list of competencies? Like, that's one of the worst things they're at. That's not their top strengths and skills, but you have them doing those kind of things. And why are you mad at them? Well, like, that's not their jam.
Yeah, like what you expect, right?
Exactly. It's kind of like, and most people don't know. I mean, most people don't, come to a position and say, "Hey, here's the, list of 25 skills. Here's what I'm, top things I'm good at, and here's what I really stink at." Right? Most people don't show that information. You kind of, unfortunately, have to stumble and kind of figure it out. But I just kind of laugh because like you said, you can look at, well, here's the things that I'm really good at, but on the other end, well, here's the things I'm not the greatest at, and do I really want to waste a lot of time doubling down on stuff that I'm not? I'm never going to improve to a point to make it. The juice isn't worth the squeeze at that point.
Right. Well, yes, but at the same time, I think that it's good to try to foster new skills. So one thing that I mentioned earlier that I think a good leader does is listen, and that's something that I identified in my assessment, and as I go have the things, really install the value and know the value and taking a step back, really listening and planning for you.
Nice. Well, that's a great example of improving and knowing a skill that, hey, I need to be good at this for what I do, and oh wow, I've actually got truth to power, pen to paper, that, hey, that's not my strongest suit, right? But I need to, so that I can actively start working on that versus
Right.
project management. Or let's just, for example, like, okay, that's not a big thing, say if it's not a big thing in the industry, you're like, well, I'm not going to sign up to be like take a position as a project manager when project management is kind of one of my lowest things. I'm probably not going to pursue that kind of career move versus, or we need to do that. So let me bring somebody in who's really good at that, because
Right.
I'll pull my hair out if I try to do this, right? Because it frustrates me because it's not something I'm really good at.
Right. And having that knowledge. And I think that as leaders, we have to continually evaluate ourselves because you may not be getting the feedback from anyone else. So, like for me, I'm a constitutional officer, so I really only report to the advisors. I don't have somebody doing performance. And then I think that a lot of other leaders, have boards that they report to, but they may not typically spend the time to develop. So I think that leaders, we have to give to self-evaluation.
Oh, so you're saying that you don't have a group of voters that comes and says, "All right, Heather, it's time for your annual eval, 1 to 5."
They do, but only if they're voting.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, that's a different type of eval. That eval doesn't go to HR. Let's just put it that way. that eval goes to the Department of Elections, right? That's not the not HR. But well, I get it without having that kind of feedback. I mean, and honestly, with you giving feedback to others and them giving you feedback that report to you, it's sometimes difficult for folks to give honest feedback to somebody that could stand in between them and a paycheck.
Right.
And I think
you hold back a little bit, or maybe only provide positive reinforcement, and that's not always helpful.
no, and I think personally that's and I'd like to get your opinion on this, but I think personally it's incumbent on somebody in that position, in that leadership position, to create the space. Whether I hate buzzwords, but whether you call it psychological safety, build the culture, whatever tag you want to put on there, make it to where people know I can come and give you honest feedback, sometimes maybe even brutal feedback delivered in a positive way, and know that you're not going to get their head bit off or they're going to get fired.
100%, because otherwise it's an echo chamber. You need to be able to rely on people to give you good advice, because otherwise I think you will find that you're making decisions that aren't well influenced.
True. Echo chambers and groupthink end up in let's see, Bay of Pigs and the Challenger explosion, and neither of them were good, right?
No.
kind of extreme examples, right? But it's, so maybe maybe something like that in your office isn't quite as big as the Bay of Pigs or the Challenger explosion, but thinking about how it could affect a defendant's life could be. It's massively impactful for them or a victim.
Right. I think it's important to have diverse opinions in your staff. So I have attorneys on both sides of the political spectrum who can then voice different viewpoints and help us come to the best answer.
No, that's a good point, because it's when you hear a lot about diversity, you obviously just demographics, but in some cases, but I really think having the diversity of viewpoint, diversity of thought, diversity of opinions, I mean, and being able to share those and having that environment that you can share those is huge, because just like you said, you don't want to end up in an echo chamber. You could have, the most diverse office in the world as far as, demographics go. And if everybody thinks and behaves and communicates the exact same way, like, where's the real diversity there? As far as being having different viewpoints and different thoughts and looking at it from different perspectives and angles.
Exactly. No, I couldn't agree more. And it's that diversity of thought that helps us move forward.
Yeah. And what are some things that you would recommend leaders to do to possibly foster that environment, or when they're bringing in people to be able to kind of look for those types of things?
Well, I think it's important not to just look at people who think like yourself. Now, granted, I know it's important to have a good fit. So you have to have people that are going to have the general outlook that we're here to do good. More but that doesn't exclude people. So I think that it's important to look for people to get and be able to push you.
Nice. Yeah, I would. I definitely agree about the fit, because, like I said, if using your case as an example, if everybody's there, hey, we're here to do the right thing, we're here to do good, the greater good for, like I said, the community, society, the justice, the Commonwealth, the defendant and the victim, and you hire a prosecutor that's like Butts in cages. That's it. Butts in cages. Right? That's my goal. But wins. I'm trying to make a name for myself. I want to run. I want a 98% rate. 100% conviction rate. You might go over to so and so county or so and so city. Yeah, this might not be the place for you.
Exactly.
Have you ever come across some of those that you've interviewed or that possibly?
That I've interviewed? Yes. Yeah. Certainly have on both sides too. I've come across people who don't think anyone should be incarcerated. If there ought to be reasons, it doesn't always actually work that way. So,
we're not all sitting around the campfire kumbaya. Hey, this guy just murdered 3 people. Well,
right.
Let him sit on the couch and talk about it for about an hour, and he'll be all right. Just let him do his thing.
Right.
Not so much.
Isn't always applicable.
No. No, I do like the idea of really looking at each situation for its merits and its values, and where can we, do right, do good, make more, like some more productive members of society, and then where the this is just not. This person is not safe to be around general society for this reason.
Right.
Yeah, and having those conversations, I think what you were talking about with all your attorneys weekly, and be able to kind of game plan and brainstorm some of that stuff, I think is huge, because a lot of managers, a lot of leaders have meetings just to have meetings, right? And it's kind of yeah, whatever, check the box.
Schedule a meeting.
Don't get me started. That's a whole different podcast. That's a whole conversation. Although, jokingly, sometimes the meeting before the meeting and the meeting after the meeting is more impactful than the meeting itself.
Sure.
But the side conversation. But yes, but be able to have that and be able to be productive and actually feel like, okay, we've done something good and accomplished something is awesome. And know that people can share freely in that. And I think one of the last things maybe I'll get to is talk a little bit more about when you do have those types of meetings, how that, and we kind of hit on a little bit, the ability for them to be able to feel like I can share freely, I can voice my opinion, I can say what I feel like needs to be said to do the right thing, and without repercussions.
Well, that just goes back to your office atmosphere. So if people know how they're going to interact in a one-on-one situation, they know how you're going to interact in the group meeting too. Continually respecting people's opinions, making sure that they're heard, making sure that even if we don't agree with it, we might not agree with. So I think that's just important to make sure that no one walks out of that room thinking that you didn't have an interest in what they have to say.
Nice. Yeah, it's knowing. One word that I like that you use is respectfully. Like, I might not agree with you, I might vehemently disagree with you, but just the fact of being respectful and being civil, those two things kind of go hand in hand, and that, I think that goes a long way to keeping a good workplace environment and a good leadership environment, is keeping things respectful and keeping things civil, even if it's a strong point of disagreement.
Exactly. That's right. And if you have that atmosphere, we're all understanding our goals. And so if we're all understanding our goals, you can see where they're coming from when we do this. Why we see it in the way that person. So if as long as you keep that core goal in mind, and you're this is a core goal. As long as those are reiterated and reinforced repeatedly, and not taken again for granted, that if all decisions are made in that light, I think people understand.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that I picked up on, and I think it's funny, it's sad that it's needed, but I see with the SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, one of their big national pushes initiatives, you go to their site, all you're going to see is their goal is for 1 million civil conversations. And I'm like, why? We've gotten to a point where like we have to remind people, hey, be civil, be respectful. Like it's the civility is not the norm anymore, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, it's sad to say though.
Yeah, it is. And I think that a lot of different institutions, they have the strategic goals in mind, and they have their mission statements. But I think that just having them really doesn't mean a lot unless they're actually living it. So I think that as a leader, it's really important that we know what our goals are and that we're actually making all the
100%. One of my biggest pet peeves is organizations that have, oh, here's our mission, vision, values, right? And there's only two times that you ever actually see them. One, when you're just got hired and on onboarding, when HR is showing you the employee handbook, and two, when you happen to see them on the wall when you're walking past to go to the director's office or go to the CEO's office or go to the president's office or the leaders, because you're like, I see them on the wall. I heard about them when I got onboarded, but beyond that, I don't see them in action anywhere.
So the next strategic planning meeting where you dust it off to see if what changes from the last 4 years.
Exactly. Just change the dates on it, and then everybody pats each other on the back. Oh my gosh, we've got our new strategic plan! Hooray! Yes, that's like nails down a chalkboard to me. I do strategic planning, and one of the things I found a tool. I love it. Is basically is an execution based model to where it's like, and I laughed at for the 3 bullet point kind of people. It's like your strategic plan on one sheet of paper, right? You got the normal vision, mission, value, goals, all those things, who are target customers, whatever. But then on the back, it's like, okay, here's our no more than 5 goals to do in the next 3 years. Okay, well, what do I need to do in this year? What are the 5 things this year that I need to do to move the ball forward towards those 3-year goals, and then break it down by quarter. Okay, well, here are the tasks that need to be done and who owns them. So that way you have a solid plan, and then every quarter you revisiting. Okay, well, and okay, well, we're coming up on month 1, month 2, month 3, or how are we doing on meeting these tasks at the end of the quarter? Did we do these? Right? Because I mean, who owns them. It's not a position; it's a person, right? Who owns this task, and then exactly, and then Q2, Q3, Q4. At some point, what are you actually able to move the needle? And then same thing, man. Year 2, okay, well, we've accomplished these for year 1. What do we need to do in year 2 to meet our big 3-year goals, right? And you're actually, like you said, you're using it, you're living it. It's a living document. It's something that guides your actions every day instead of, oh, look at that pretty binder on the shelf that we haven't seen since then. So tell our listeners, as we kind of wrap it up, tell our listeners a little bit about how they can connect with you, connect on LinkedIn, whatever, how all the goodness of Heather Hovermale.
Well, if you want to know what the Commonwealth can help us and not help with, that's at va.gov, and you can find information about it there. You're also welcome to call my office because, like I said, I like to meet with people whenever possible, or we must. Zoom will be okay too. But I don't really want to do emails. I don't really want to do work. We can avoid it. So if you call, we can set up an in-person meeting. 540-722-7940. I would love to meet with you if you have any suggestions, concerns, or just want general knowledge about how the Commonwealth is working here.
Nice, that's good. I'm able to connect with you on LinkedIn.
No, I don't do LinkedIn. I think I might have it from the law firm I used to work at, but they have a password, so it has attached to my law firm email.
Just one question I always like to ask, because some people are really big on it, and some people are like, I'm allergic to social media, and I can respect both ends of it, right? I get it. I unfortunately need to use it for work, but just I kind of got dragged into the social media thing, kicking and screaming by my wife about 8 years ago. I was just like, no, nobody needs to know what I'm eating for breakfast. I don't care.
Right. So, I'm
Winchester dot.
Winchester.gov is where you can find information about the office. I don't to social media very much. My campaign does it every 4 years just to kind of explain what we're about. But the reason my office doesn't have social media is it's important to me for victims' privacy to be respected. And as a governmental office, if you open up the feed, you have to allow all the speech. So I try to make sure that I'm not doing any harm to my victims.
Very wise and very applicable to the office. So it's just kind of a generalized question, but we'll Winchester.gov, and that's the best way to connect. And beyond that, thank you so much, Heather, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and we will wrap up this episode of Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave. We will see you next time. Take care.